Great to be here talking with you about battery minerals. I've got to say, as an old miner, I find it really energising, and I apologise for the pun. I can hear my teenage children groaning from the other side of the country, but I do find it really energising to be in a market that challenges mining to change the game, challenges mining to redefine itself. And that's what the battery metals market does. Allow me to introduce you to Mallee Resources, Australia's newest nickel cobalt producer. I don't know how long we're going to have that title for, but we've got it today and I'll take it. And also, let me introduce you to the star of our show, the Avebury Nickel Mine in Tasmania. This is the mine that will reset the bar for critical minerals, not just in Australia, but globally. Avebury's a rarity, perhaps the only nickel sulphide mine in the world right now that is located in a Tier 1 jurisdiction and powered predominantly by renewable energy. It's neat and clean with a small footprint, it's productive, it's profitable, and it boasts a tiny carbon signature. To help you get your bearings as you look at the photograph there, we're about 2 kilometres inland from the west coast of Tasmania, and if you look closely, just below the logo, you can see the sea. That is the Great Southern Ocean, so the photograph looks probably northwest. That's the west coast you can see of Tasmania there. It's a beautiful wild place, and we intend to keep it that way. So our story starts in a place that most others will never reach. Our future's long and bright, and our path a little different to most. And I'm delighted to be here to tell you all about it. Now, I've been showing this slide for a while now, some months. It's the investment proposition that Mallee bought into when we acquired Avebury out of administration about a year ago. And it remains as compelling now as it did then. Avebury has a JORC 2012 resource of over 250,000 tonnes of nickel in the ground. It's open in all directions with some clear targets to expand the resource without a great deal of drilling. Of course, it's not just any nickel, it's nickel sulphide, class 1 nickel, battery grade nickel, pentlandite. We know it well in this forum. And of course, Avebury is located in one of the most stable, well-regulated, well-serviced mining jurisdictions in the world. 140 kilometres from a deep water port, which has a dedicated minerals handling facility. We have a bitumen road to the door, and we have grid green power, hydroelectric and wind power delivered to the mine gate. Add to that a nice little town called Zeehan nearby where the people live. It's got 3 pubs at the moment, so that's got to be a good thing, got to be a mining town. Fantastic little spot. Avebury's in production right now. It's successfully exporting nickel cobalt concentrate to the world, and I'm really pleased to be able to tell you that as of the last 24 hours we have produced our 10,000th tonne of concentrate. So that's pretty exciting. We've got a fantastic team, veterans, 30 plus years in the industry in the key leadership roles, and we're building an enviable crew of miners and operators and professionals, maintainers. We're already low carbon. We have a path to no carbon. I'm talking about zero carbon nickel and cobalt at the mine gate, and that of course adds value to the critical minerals that we already produce. Corporately, we're fairly simple. If you'd heard my presentation a few months ago, that wouldn't have been the case, but these days, corporately, we're pretty simple. 415 million shares on issue and a few performance rights. Modest debt on an asset of this quality. What's important about that, though, is if you then calculate an enterprise value from that structure, about $192 million, that works out at $728 per tonne of nickel in the ground in the JORC resources. Now, that's pretty low for a producing Australian nickel sulphide mine. What that means is that Mallee, at the share price you see there, is pretty cheap. Now, that's not surprising. We're pre-IPO, so you get that. Shareholding, 1/3 Hartree. They're our major shareholder. They're also our offtake partner. Other large holders account for a bit less than 1/3, and retail investors a bit more than 1/3. And as for directors, just the 3 of us, plus Ross, our CFO, who's had to be added to the slide to make up numbers. And He's excellent value, by the way. Thank you, Ross. We plan to add at least 2 more non-executive directors once we get through the listing piece, and that's planned for a little bit later this year. But just to run you through those folks very quickly, Jeff's a very experienced geologist. Rowan's a commercial guy with an accounting background and an experienced company secretary. Ross is an investment banker and financial analyst, and I'm a technical and operations guy who first set foot on an underground mine 35 years ago, so I've had a little bit of practice. And full disclosure here, I put myself in to open the batting as GM at Avebury. I've made a quick 50 and the fund police want me back in the MD role, so I'm in the process of recruiting the next batter. Here's the one-page snapshot of Avebury. So 2 tenement packages covering Avebury and the prospective ultramafic rocks that run out to the coast, and then the Melbourne district, quite separate, about 20 kilometres inland, with historical workings and a large magnetic anomaly that we still have to do some work on. At Avebury, we have a fully developed underground mine, nameplate of 900,000 tonnes per annum, but equipped with a plant that we believe will do 1.2 million or maybe a little bit more. We've already proved that with the crushing circuit. We believe the rest of the plant can get there too. And let me be clear, our ultimate goal at Avebury is not nameplate, but it's the expanded Avebury. Avebury is a 1% ore body, all day long, every day. There's no high grade to run to, it's a 1% ore body. The real value at Avebury comes with scale. As I said, well serviced, large resource, and the offtake with our trading partner, Hartree, and in production. We started in October last year. We've already produced over 1,300 tonnes of nickel metal and cobalt in concentrate. We've booked receipts of over $30 million so far. We have a team of 190, a few more than that now, on site and growing. So this is a real producing thing. It's happening now. It's not a managing director's story and it's not a geologist's folly. And it's big. Not quite BHP big, but bigger than everyone else big. This is a chart showing Australia's nickel sulphide producers by JORC resource size. And that's before the geologists have had a crack at it. We drilled our first grade control holes in February, and they were the first drill holes at Avebury in 14 years. We're mobilising a second rig right now, and we're beginning to drill some resource holes. So watch this space. We're working on a recut resource statement and a model, and you'll see that in the next month or so, and that will begin to set out the Avebury picture for the future as we see it. A brief overview of the operations, starting with geology. The geology team is flying. They're super talented and motivated. Drilling, as I said, has begun for the first time in 14 years. They're working their way through the resource model, and I guess it really belongs to the engineers, but it's on the geology part of this slide. We'll be issuing an ore reserve before the middle of this year, and maybe a little sooner than that if we can get ourselves organised, and that is really very exciting. Mining is boosted by big stopes close to surface, very high tonnes per vertical metre. It's very efficient. Short haul distances, big blasts, development already done 2 years in front of the mining front. And a few other benefits too, things like alkaline mine water. Alkaline water means no corrosion of your ground support or your electricals. The vehicles don't rust. The plant's fantastic and the team is brilliant. They've not only commissioned the plant but debottlenecked it to nameplate capacity, and it now runs more ore than ever before at higher recoveries. Outbound logistics is straightforward. You can see the picture there of the truck being loaded, truck to Burnie. At Burnie we bag and then it's held until the orders come in. At the moment we're shipping out in containers. The offtake is flexible, has really good payability, and as I said, we're 10,000 tonnes of concentrate produced now, and 90% of that is on ship or, in fact, at the ultimate customer already. So we're up and running and flying. So how we got here over the last few months has been nothing short of outstanding, and it is a great credit to the 190 plus loyal women and men that we have on site at Avebury. The first few grains of concentrate were made at the very end of September. Now that was just 3 months after Mallee took over, and 3 months after that we were regularly exporting and beginning to book our revenue. Production stabilised at 50,000 tonnes a month. Now that annualises at 600,000 tonnes per annum, ready for the push up to nameplate. Nameplate capacity 75,000 tonnes a month, 900,000 tonnes a year. I can tell you February, which isn't on the chart, that was a 50,000 tonne month. March has passed 50,000 already, so we're on track for an 80,000 tonne month out of the mine for March. We're building stocks, drilled stocks in the mine, broken stocks in the mine, ROM stocks on surface before we turn the dial on the processing plant. And costs are okay at this stage. All-in sustaining cost for Q2, which was our first quarter of production, was US $17,400 per tonne of nickel sold, which I thought was pretty good for our first go-round. At nameplate, the number is just under 14,000 US a tonne, so if you think about that in terms of dollars a pound, that's $6.30 a pound. And at 1.2 million tonnes, we're projecting about 11,500 US a tonne, so that's about $5.40 a pound. That's our cost trajectory, and you can just see in those numbers how highly leveraged Avebury is to production volume. The mine has had a huge amount of effort invested in 6 months. We've hired staff, acquired equipment, upgraded and refurbished the vent, the power, the water, the dewater and the escape systems. The entire stoping cycle from the first design of the development all the way through the process to filling the hole at the end after you've completed the stope, that's now been done repeatedly by our team. And that's very important. That means our system works. So it's more than just picking up somebody's abandoned mine plan. We are masters of our own destiny now. The mine's running well and will accelerate up to nameplate capacity over the next 2 months. One of the things that's really important here is that we have a very heavy focus on ore stream quality. The ore needs to be well fragmented, no trash, minimum tramp steel and minimum dilution. If you can get those things right, that sets the processing plant up for success. As far as the plant goes, commissioning and debottlenecking has been a roaring success. In many cases, that success meant undoing some of the modifications of the past, going back to design, starting it up, running it through, working out where the bottlenecks were and then resolving those one at a time. So, for example, we turned a crushing plant that struggled to do 2,000 tonnes a day in the past, and when it did, it produced off-spec product that was too big. We turned that into a system that can deliver at twice that rate and all of it on spec. Now, that was achieved by adding a dust extraction plant, and that allows us to keep the process dry. And in the past, water was added, the ore would get sticky and it wouldn't go through the screens, and those of you that have operated plants will know the story. Keep the product dry, focus on quality coming in, and then we went through and re-gapped all of the crusher gaps. We set the sensors right. We returned the screens, the final screens, back to their design size, and lo and behold, we have plenty of crushing power to feed the mill with nicely sized fine ore instead of the lumps it saw in the past, and that plant will do 1.5 times nameplate easily. Similar story with the processing plant itself. The mill now runs at nameplate capacity. Float plant is fine. Get along to the filter at the end. What we found there was that the feed pumps were too small, so we returned ourselves back to design, found the bottleneck, replaced those with larger pumps, and that part of the system will now do nameplate as well. So the processing plant in total, from crushing to final concentrate, is now at nameplate capacity and ready to receive ore from the mine at that rate, which is pretty exciting. Recruiting has been highly successful. We're 190 or a little more now. Over a third of those live locally, and over time what you find in Tasmania is that when mines start there's a lot of driving in and out that's done. I'm expecting that once we're 5 or 6 years in, that 1/3 that lives locally will have become 2/3. As people begin to get comfortable, they put down roots on the west coast, they find that it's not such a bad place to live after all. We're big investors in technology. Technology makes our people safer and more productive. So already we have an autonomous artificial intelligence drone for remote stope surveys, full guidance tele-remote boggers that can be operated from the surface, and we're in the process of installing an automated drill core logging and scanning system, an operator assist anti-collision system on the trucks, an energy monitoring system across our processing plant, a card access system for security, and auto drilling control on the new drills that will arrive into Australia next month. We're electrifying, we're installing energy reduction measures throughout the plant, and we're working on shifting to electric equipment, and the first of those, which is a jumbo, will arrive in the middle of the year. So it's pretty exciting and all systems go. This graphic shows the immediate upside on the resource. Now I haven't got the drill holes turned on this view, but if I did, you'd see that the resource tracks the drilling, no surprise there. Heavily drilled in the middle, sparsely drilled on the edges, and not drilled at all below about 400 metres. And so the yellow zones that I've got there, they're not guesses, there are drill holes in them, but we're looking for greater density before we call it a resource. So the two main mineralised areas, the Viking and the Avebury, they start off as indicated in the middle, and then as you go down plunge, that turns to inferred, and as you go a little bit further down plunge, that turns into potential as the drilling peters out, and in the end it stops where the drilling stops. So we'll fix that. Meanwhile, the purple areas amount to about 30 million tonnes, and you'll see this formalised in our new resource statement when that comes out. But we have been quite conservative when it comes to joining the dots. The resource drill spacing so far is 30 metres, and we're closing that up to 15. And as we do it, we're finding more ore between the old holes. We've actually added a brand new stope recently that nobody knew existed between two fences of drill holes. Everybody thought there was nothing there, and lo and behold, there was. We're exploring regionally as well. As I said, we've got two packages of land. Close to Avebury, you've got the ultramafic arc, which is a great arc of ultramafic rock that heads out towards the coast to the south, and then just to the north of that you've got the Heemskirk granite, and it dives underneath, and where you've got the granite, which is the source of the heat for pretty much every ore body on the west coast of Tasmania, where you've got the granite sitting underneath the ultramafic, that's where it gets really exciting, and you'll see on the slide there it tracks that kind of jumbled up series of anomalies. They're magnetic anomalies, and that's where we've got potential for more Aveburys. Avebury was created by remobilising nickel from olivine in the ultramafic, so we know how that formed and we know where we're going to find more of those. And up the road at Melbourne, it's completely different. The ultramafic rocks are still there, but it's not the host. There, the ore is hosted in the gabbro. It's high grade nickel, high grade copper, platinum group metals and gold, completely different. So we're looking for something else. We're looking for the magma chamber that sits underneath that one. We're looking for our very own Voisey's Bay. So we've got a gravity survey planned for a little bit later this year, and that one could be very, very exciting. But either way, I can see decades of production at Avebury and from our tenement package. So we've established that Avebury's big, productive and with scope to expand, but it's also green. Thanks to Tasmania's 100% renewable power generation, wind and hydro, it is already amongst the very lowest carbon footprint nickel sulphide in the world. The figure on the graph there, by the way, in case you're trying to scale it, is 1.9 tonnes of carbon CO2 per tonne of nickel produced. That's at present, and that's pretty low. That matters, of course, because Avebury's nickel is the relatively rare sulphide. It contains roughly the right proportion of cobalt to go into a battery, and so it matters that we have a low carbon product. And as I mentioned before, we're looking to move to electric vehicles. Avebury's geometry means that we can do that. It suits battery electric trucks and loaders. It suits the current generation available right now from manufacturers off the shelf. So we have a plan, a realistic plan, to take ourselves all the way down to zero carbon nickel at the mine gate if we choose to do so. And I don't know of another producer on the planet with a realistic plan to do that right now. I'll spare you the story on the nickel market. We've heard that plenty of times today, but suffice to say the world is decarbonising. We need nickel to do that, and there isn't enough. It's as simple as that. Changing gears a little bit, news flow matters, and we have a very busy agenda this year. Right now, as I said, we're working on our resources and reserves, and you'll see those fairly shortly, and I'm really excited about that. I'm also itching to turn up the dial on the plant. I just need to get a few more stocks ready in the mine to do that, but we're aiming to hit nameplate capacity certainly before the end of the financial year. We've pledged to shareholders that we will list this year. It's a bit tricky picking a gap between the American and Swiss banks that are having their problems right now, but we'll get there. Later in the year, we'll also issue our first ever ESG report. That will substantiate our green credentials. We'll produce our expansion study, and so you'll be able to see that, and you'll also begin to see some exploration results towards the back end of the year. So by Christmas, we're going to be bigger, and our shareholders are going to be very happy. And speaking of ESG, we're deeply entrenched in this as a business ethos. Avebury has a lot of natural advantages. It's neat and it's clean, and people in fact tell me it's the cleanest mine site they've ever been on. It's well cared for, the footprint is small, environmental impacts are well managed. We recycle and repurpose whatever we can. Every skerrick of waste rock from the mine goes back underground as fill. And when we have our paste plant online next year, the tailings will go underground as well. We catch rainwater for drinking. The community is engaged and supportive. We're in everything we can be in. We support everything we can support. We run a quarterly grants program where community groups seek funding for their projects. We adhere to standards and we transparently report. And our ESG report will bear all of this out. I'm looking forward to being able to launch that. As I said at the start, this mine resets the bar for critical minerals globally. It meets modern community expectations for what a critical minerals mine should look like these days. It's a shining example, it's a disruptor, and we absolutely love it. And so to summarise, new, large, de-risked mine that is producing Class 1 nickel and cobalt from a fantastic location in a Tier 1 jurisdiction. A fantastic team, value accretive events on the horizon, an expansion plan in train, a large resource with huge potential to grow, genuine ESG credentials, already low carbon intensity and a plan to reach net zero. Ladies and gentlemen, I put it to you that there's only one of these. So if you're a battery manufacturer or an EV company, come and see me. If you're an investor, come and see me. I'll finish, because I've got a little bit of time left, I'll finish with a few happy snaps from site. Underground, jumbo there in the first shot. In the middle there you can see one of the cells in our tailings dam. In the background, the processing plant, and behind that Mount Zion, very beautiful. And on the right-hand side, one of our community members with a food pantry in town. We sponsored that last year. And then a few shots from underground, a couple of shots of our underground loaders, the first drill core in 14 years, and the first truck of ore coming out in 13 years. That was taken middle of last year, and that was a very happy day, I can tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.